I wanted to talk today about language tutors. So you can see in my notes, and let's get into it. So you can find the language tutor at a number of websites, but the main website that I've used is iTalki, which you may have heard of before. It's italki.com. And on iTalki, there are a lot of tutors. There are many different languages available that you can get tutored in. And one way that I used language tutors was that I used a language tutor as a warm-up before going to Mexico to conduct business. You may or may not know, I have a company that sells leather jackets online. It's called Independence Brothers at independencebrothers.com. And so we have the jackets made in Mexico, in Leon. And so before my brother and I went down there to conduct business, find a manager for a workshop, and talk with other people, I hired a tutor. I think even just for 1 hour. It might have been 2 hours or 1 hour, I forget. But I spoke to him in Spanish. That way I could kind of get the language in my mind going. And this is because I hadn't spoken Spanish in a long time, so it was very rusty. But when I was talking to him, I think his name is Raul. But as I was talking to him, I tried to use as many grammatical structures in my head to kind of bring them to the forefront, as well as spoke about topics that I thought I might likely talk about as I was in Mexico during that trip. So what that meant was basically introducing myself, talking a little bit about where I came from, what my needs were, talking about my company, Independence Brothers, and talking about what I was looking for in terms of leather jackets. That way I could kind of imagine the conversations I was going to have and the things that were likely to come up. And that way I could be prepared in my head to have those language structures available in Spanish so that I could just speak them when it actually came up in real life. So I also used language tutors to improve my conversational Mandarin Chinese. And in this case, how I went about it was I hired 4 language tutors and I went through lessons with all 4 of them. Actually a couple of times before I settled on the one that I thought was the best and the one that matched me the best in terms of what I was looking for and what I thought about language learning. And so what I used to do was, with this language tutor, I asked her permission, of course, but I actually video recorded the screen because these were tutoring sessions over Skype. They're video calls. And so I would do a screen capture and I would record the lesson so that I could go back over it later. That way I could kind of see if there was anything that I missed, or if I wanted to check out the way I was speaking, my accents, the way I spoke. That was always good. The other thing I always had was I had a shared Google Doc, which I had the tutor write in all the words that we came across that I did not know and I wanted to learn. That way I could have a nice Google Doc with just a list of all the vocabulary and sentence structures that I wanted to learn and that I didn't know already. That way after the class, I could go back and I could read through this document, and I could also use the document to get the words to put into Anki. That way I could study them further. So another thing is that sometimes it's good to switch tutors after you've used the tutor for a while, and this is because the fresher the tutor is, the more likely it is they're gonna correct your mistakes. I think this is kind of a common human thing, which is if you talk to a language tutor long enough, they might correct you on a certain thing the first time, the second time, the third time, but after a while they'll get lazy and they'll stop correcting you on it and they'll just kind of let it slide by. So in order to get someone to keep correcting you, sometimes it makes sense to just switch to a new language tutor so you can restart that process. And probably the new language tutor may even find other things to correct you on. So it's good to be able to get a number of language tutors. I remember I kept the same Mandarin Chinese tutor for a long time, and I felt like after a while I wasn't making a lot of progress because it was basically a conversation format where we would just talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. She didn't really have much plans for each session, but it was more just about me kind of talking and she having a conversation with me, which is fine, that's great. But it felt like after a while that I hit a level where I wasn't necessarily making a lot of progress forward. I was kind of just maintaining the same level. And I think if I were to go back and do it again, what I would do differently is I would try to plan out the session a bit more. I would, before the session even began, I would write out some of the things I wanted to talk about, maybe look up some vocabulary I wanted to learn to be able to talk about it, and then I would practice being able to speak those sentences about those topics. And that way she would have been able to have given me good corrections on something that I myself was trying to learn and practice. So another thing is it's important to find a tutor with a good personality, someone that you might even connect with even if you weren't having them tutor you in the language. And this is important because it's going to keep you motivated in the language, it's going to keep you coming back for the sessions, it's going to keep you moving forward in the language because it's interesting just to talk to this person alone, not to mention the fact that it's in a foreign language. So if you can find someone who is more like your friends than, say, a language tutor, that's what you want to hit because that's what's going to keep you engaged. Another way I use language tutors is I hired a language tutor for Teochew, and you might not know what Teochew is. You may have never heard of it. Teochew is basically a Chinese dialect. It's a dialect spoken in China by about, I think it's about by 15 million people. So it's actually quite high. I think it's more than languages like Swedish and Danish. But you've probably never heard of the language because it's, you know, a Chinese dialect, and it's mostly spoken in China and the diaspora around the world with Chinese people. But right now, the Chinese government is moving in a direction of trying to get everyone onto Mandarin. So there's not a lot of, you know, positivity around speaking these minority languages. You know, the same way we have in Europe around languages like Scottish Gaelic, or languages like these, or, you know, Catalan, these languages that people are trying to speak more of or even revive in some cases. But anyway, I got a language tutor for Teochew because it's so difficult to even find any resources for this language online. There's no book on Amazon for Teochew, and when I searched online for programs, I was only able to find maybe 1 or 2 guides, and there really wasn't a lot there. So I realized I had to hire a tutor just to get access to this language to be able to learn it. And the reason I'm learning it is because my friends Meow and Sabrina both speak this language, and they're very good friends of mine. And I figured, hey, if these 2 girls are in my life speaking this language, that's kind of my fate to learn this language. So the interesting thing about Teochew is that although there is a written system for it using Chinese characters, most people who speak Teochew do not know how to write it. And this is because when people in China go to school, they learn how to write in Mandarin Chinese. And they don't learn how to write, usually they don't learn how to write in, say, Cantonese or Teochew, or any of these other languages, Fuzhouhua, anything like that. So that makes it a bit more challenging because I do have the Google Doc, which I have Camille, the tutor, write in, but I have to go through it afterwards and I have to correct the way that she's written out the speech. Because although there is a Pengnim system, which is like Pinyin, and that uses the Roman alphabet to represent the Teochew words, she doesn't know it, she's never used it. And so, yeah, that's something you have to be careful about. A lot of the time, she's not even sure of which tone the word is using. So that's something you have to be careful about as well. So, yeah, those are kind of the ways that I've used language tutors in the past and how I continue to use them. I think they can be a great resource if you get the right person. But that's the thing, you have to get the right person and you have to make sure they do it in a format that you like. Whether that be a format where you're just having a conversation back and forth, or they're using a textbook to teach you, or you're going over exercises, whatever you're most comfortable with. And I definitely recommend that if you do get a language tutor, get at least 3 or 4 at the beginning just to test them out, and then choose the one that you like the best. Because it's probably not the case you're going to find the one that you like right off the bat is the first person you choose. So make sure you try a few before you settle on one. That being said, I wanted to ask all of you if you speak Italian or if you learn Italian. I'm looking for someone as kind of an Italian pen pal. I'm not looking to have a video chat. I'm looking more just to write messages back and forth in Italian. And this is to be able to activate my Italian and get better. So if you speak Italian natively, or if you're just a learner of Italian and you've learned a little bit, please send me a message, a DM on Instagram. I'll put a link to my Instagram. It's Robbie Coons, and I'll put a link in the description of this video. You can also find a link on my channel page on YouTube. But yeah, I'm just looking for someone to kind of write messages back and forth as a pen pal kind of situation. So if you speak Italian, send me a DM. I'll be interested in that. Okay, thank you so much.